A man partially responsible for threatening to crash an airplane into a nuclear facility in Oak Ridge 40 years ago is telling his side of the story tonight.
10 News reporter Anthony Welch takes us on Southern Airways Flight 49.
They asked for $10 million in cash. It was brought to Chattanooga Airport in cloth bags.
It's 1972, and for moments, all attention is on Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and a hijacked airplane's trip through the sky that lasted nearly 30 hours.
Two of the hijackers, Henry Jackson and Lewis Moore, are from Detroit.
But Lewis Moore says this report isn't the whole story.
There's the other side of me, that it ain't just something that I just jumped off and did.
And in order to start to understand why he did what he did, you've got to go back to the 1960s in downtown Knoxville. About 20 years old, the old Austin High School graduate fought for civil rights and says he was among this crowd at the Tennessee Theater and was even arrested.
We've come a long way or whatnot, but I think we got a long way to go to.
After he moved to Detroit for work, he says a special police unit that's since been disbanded for corruption made threats to his family.
A man can take so much. And then there's frustration.
It set him, his half-brother, and a friend off, looking for a way to get the city of Detroit and the nation's attention.
We decided just to take it to another level.
That's where Harold Johnson
started hanging around the airport when I was probably 15.
A man living nearly 500 miles away, and a co-pilot of Southern Airways Flight 49 comes into play.
And then suddenly the door of the cockpit burst open, and in came a flight attendant, and this black guy had his arm around her neck and had a gun up to her head, and he said, "We're taking over the airplane."
Moore and two others hijacked the plane shortly after takeoff over Alabama. They demanded cash, $10 million from the Motor City, to keep the roughly 3 dozen passengers on board safe.
And if they didn't have the money, we were going to crash the airplane into the nuclear reactor at Knoxville.
Into the high-flux isotope reactor, and I thought, this has got to be a joke. This is too extreme. This sounds like a TV drama. With
the DC-9 flying above Oak Ridge, the then Atomic Energy Commission facility was scurrying, working to get safety measures ready.
Not much we can do to prevent it. They've got the guns, we don't, and there's at least 3 of them, maybe more, we don't know.
As Oak Ridge kept an eye on the sky, many feared the worst.
There were something like 10,000 calls to Oak Ridge, not just to the public information people, 10,000 calls from the public that came in that day.
Within hours, scientists determined a plane crash likely wouldn't cause a large explosion, with minimal radiation being released. The hijackers, meanwhile, were told their cash was waiting for them at Chattanooga, so they headed there, picked up millions of dollars, and then took off, this time heading to Cuba.
It's a matter of us fighting, the government. The United States Constitution tells us we have a right to revolt or rebel.
As part of more than a dozen stops, they'd eventually wind up in Orlando, needing fuel.
The FBI came on the scene, and the FBI director ordered the tires on the airplane shot out.
And that left a hijacker's gun pointed at Johnson. He believes they blamed him for the FBI shooting out the tires.
I could visualize my brains being blown out and scattered all over the seat and this kind of stuff, and thought just momentarily of my dad and my daughter and my wife, and that's all I had time to think of.
As the gun fired, Johnson dove to the floor.
Oh, it's right up here in the shoulder, just below this joint.
Now, Moore wasn't the trigger man. He says the shooting was an accident, definitely not part of the plan.
I hate that there were innocent people involved.
So with blown tires and a one-armed co-pilot, the plane again took off, heading south.
The hijackers then demanded to talk by radio with President Nixon of Key Biscayne, Florida. When they failed, they went back to Havana and gave themselves up.
Once landed, Cuban authorities rushed Johnson to a hospital. He didn't realize he was driving headlines along with that Southern Airways plane until he talked to his wife.
I said, we've been hijacked, and I didn't know what you knew about it. And she said, the whole world knows about it. So
Lewis Moore served 8 years in Cuban detention facilities and 7 years in United States prison.
You try to do things right.
Today, back in Knoxville, he says he's learned a thing or two as he continues pushing for his form of justice.
Trying to take a different approach. That's the reason I march with my baby.
Today, Moore has turned to raising signs of protest instead of the tools he once would turn to.
I'm not denying what I did. I feel that I do owe people, I do even the passengers, I do owe them an explanation.
In Knoxville, Anthony Welch, 10 News.
What a history lesson right there. Now, Lewis Moore says he's working on a book detailing his side of that 1972 flight.
So compelling. For complete interviews and detailed accounts from all the men involved, you can head to WBIR.com.
And we'll be right back.